You are watching the New American Media. Live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, the United States of America, Los Angeles, California to be specific. Hello, howdy everybody. My name is Brian Engelman. Welcome. Thank you for finding us today here on Agree to Disagree on TNAM Radio, part of the newamericanmedia.com. That song, as I was mentioning to Blake, who is our special guest co-host of the day, Blake Wally, Blake the Eccentric, from Eccentric Perspective on freedomizerradio.com. You can check him there Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, noon to 1:30 p.m. PST. The name of that song is called Calm Before the Storm, the one that I'm turning back up right here. Calm Before the Storm. Seems like a pretty good song to be playing right about now. Hurricane Sandy. I wonder if the
Is that your band?
Yeah, that's actually our band. That's Twist of Nothing.
What were you playing in that band?
I'm clearly singing. Can't you hear the no vocals?
Right.
Hang on. We'll listen to the jam.
Very groovy. I like it.
I am the drummer on this particular song. This would be my brother on the turntables. Yeah, it was a fun song. The song was just a jam we did in the studio, and our guitar player played the bass, and our bass player played the guitar, and we just rocked out for a while. It was a lot of fun.
Good time.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's going to be a lot of fun and good times for those on the East Coast. I mean, I swear to you, you hear about all these October surprises, Blake, and I'm flipping around the stations, and I'm watching the path of this hurricane being drawn directly for Washington, D.C., talking about how will this impact Halloween? How will this impact the election? Will the power be out? Could there be voter fraud? Could there be claims of this? Would they have to extend the hours? I said, wow. Anyone else ever hear of HARP? Anyone hear about that weather manipulation called HARP? And that's something we can touch on in a couple of minutes here. But before we do, Blake, I want to take a second, give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to everyone. You've been on our program before. I'll just kind of let you hit the reset button and introduce yourself to everyone, and we'll start talking about Libya, Benghazi Gate, the left-wing media response / cover-up. I think you phrased it, the day the left-wing media died, set to the tune of Don McLean, American Pie. And then we'll talk about Hurricane Sandy, HARP, and prepping. So just introduce yourself to everyone for a minute.
All right. I am Blake Wally, or Blake the Eccentric. I am a writer and a radio host, and you can find me at eccentricperspective.com. And you can also, I have a radio show called the same thing, Eccentric Perspective, and I'm on freedomizerradio.com. And I also have a podcast under iTunes, Eccentric Perspective.
Yeah, and Blake and I have been co-hosting over on Freedomizer Radio, around 4 months, 3 months, 4 months, who knows?
Right around there, yeah, pretty much every Monday almost, and a lot of Thursdays too. So, yeah, I've got a 3 days a week show, and Brian usually sits in, once or twice a week, so yeah.
Well, I think it's important. We're out of time. I tell everybody that I'm talking to, I'm like, we're on borrowed time right now. It just feels like everything is in such chaos. And maybe it's always been that way throughout the history of the planet, throughout the history of time. Every generation feels like everything's about to hit the fan always. It just, I don't know, it feels a little special. It feels a little different than it has the past 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. That something feels different to me now than it used to. Do you get you're not an old man either, Blake. You're early 30s. But do you get that same feeling that we're converging upon something big that's about to pop here? Because I
agree,
feeling
yes.
it.
Yes, I think we're at a major crossroads in human history, and I think the American Empire is teetering like the end of Rome. We are the new Rome.
Explain that.
I believe it. I see the expanding empire, the constant military, the constant wars, the culture decaying. I see the economy on the verge of collapse. We seem to have a lot of parallels that you can tie to ancient Rome before they collapsed. So, and any other major empire that we've seen rise and fall.
Well, something.
Britain, Russia. Go ahead.
Well, something we tweeted out a little bit ago over on our Twitter feed. By the way, if you're not following us, follow us. We're at American_media_ and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/the new American media. We just cracked our 200 subscriber list and 45,000 video views, so we're well on our way. But we tweeted something out a little bit ago, and then so far, 24 retweets, 2 favorites. We said that we petition our government for a redress of grievances and call upon Barack Obama to immediately resign as U.S. Commander-in-Chief. #Libya. This whole Libya thing, it just gets worse and worse and worse the more you peel the layers back. Like the stinkier an onion gets. Now you're hearing rumors that this guy... Now, I hate to get into rumors, unsubstantiated. But there are reports that this is way... more intricate, involved, covert, and shady than we were even led to believe with all of the cover-ups, that there's an even worse story under the surface of this thing. So what are your general thoughts before I dig into this article here? This is the exclusive. This is several hours old at this point, but it says the CIA operators were denied request for help during the Benghazi attack. Sources say that they called for help 3 times and that... they were intentionally left there for this to happen, and that the Navy SEALs that died disobeyed the command to stay away 1 hour away, and they went in and saved as many people as they could that weren't already dead. And on their second return and third request for help, they were ultimately killed. And this whole situation reeks. So I'll dig into this story in a second, but Blake, you and I talked about it on yesterday's show. What's your understanding of this whole Benghazi Gate thing as it stands right now? Because the story's changing every hour, it seems.
Yeah, there is a major scandal, and the big issue with this one is that it's so close to the election that could have a serious outcome on the election. And you're noticing when you see, these so-called, when you look at the media, when you look at the so-called conservative versus the so-called liberal media, you will see an interest, like when we were just kind of leading in about talking about how the liberal media died. You're seeing an interesting contrast in how they want to cover stories. The article you're speaking of is on Fox. You really won't see much of a mention of this on the liberal media. They seem to be putting all of their attention onto either this goofball Richard Murdoch, senator from elect from Indiana, or we're talking about the storm. Anything just to avoid this issue. It's clear that there are lines drawn and that they're protecting the Obama administration. So it's really a sad day for media that we can't get to the bottom of this. But there's a big scandal going on right now, and there's, more details emerging. And it's amazing how the liberal media is trying to, the way that they're covering it or not covering it is pretty astounding. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, that's part of the reason why you and I do what we do. We over here at the new American media, we've given up on the corporate propaganda from the 2 puppet candidates. Fox
and given
supports,
up on the left-right, yeah.
Yeah, the left-right paradigm. They're 2 sides of the same coin. They're financed by the same people. The little guy never wins, and it's really just propaganda to keep us fighting ourselves instead of really addressing the important issues. It seems like.
And this is about right and wrong, not right and left. I don't like, running around talking about a Fox News story, but, someone's covering it. And, there's some major – and you have to ask yourself, why is Fox, making all – this is a huge story. Why isn't the liberal media picking up on this?
This is, I've heard people say 10 times bigger than Watergate, and I would agree. Let me reference this story here. Fox News has learned from sources who were on the ground in Benghazi that an urgent request from the CIA annex for military backup during the attack on the U.S. consulate and subsequent attack several hours later was denied by U.S. officials, who also told the CIA operators twice to, quote, stand down, end quote, rather than help the ambassador's team when shots were heard approximately 9:40 p.m. in Benghazi on September 11th. Former Navy SEAL Tyrone Woods was part of a small team who was at the CIA annex about a mile from the U.S. consulate where Ambassador Chris Stevens and his team came under attack. When he and others heard the shots fired, they informed the higher-ups at the annex to tell them what they were hearing and requested permission to go to the consulate and help out. They were told to, quote, stand down, end quote, according to sources familiar with the exchange. Soon after, they were again told to stand down. Woods and at least 2 others ignored those orders and made their way to the consulate, which at that point was on fire. Shots were exchanged. The rescue team... And by the... Why am I getting this a month and a half later from a Fox News story instead of our damn commander-in-chief? Why is Hillary Clinton not telling us the story? Nobody knows what's going on with this, Blake.
No, and they deliberately came out and lied about it. So they do know much. They do know a lot more than they're saying. Yes, and then Hillary Clinton was like supposedly going to take responsibility, but she wasn't really, saying what had happened. So, and now just the details are emerging that they knew all along, and that they made up a completely fictitious story and spread that around, and it could have led to some pretty disastrous results had they kept this thing completely under wraps. So, I mean, this is a huge cover-up with hundreds of people involved. Certainly just a scandal that's going to rock the foundation of the country.
I mean, you talk about blaming the First Amendment and misusing the First Amendment. You can't. I've said it on your program. You cannot misuse the First Amendment. You're allowed to be a jerk in this country. There's no law that says you can't, and the fact that this video has been banned in so many countries, and that the maker of this video was arrested in a perp walk at 1:30 in the morning, arrest out here in California because of some parole violations. And I'm not defending the guy. The guy seems to be a bit of a creep, and I'm sure he is up to some wrongdoing. At least my initial spidey senses tell me we're not. I mean, watch the video. It's so stupid. I just wonder anyone who would spend their time on something so stupid. But to go out there and try to appease, once again, this is that global apology tour crap. It's trying to apologize at the UN for misusing the First Amendment to make such inflammatory content and really just making such offensive material as if that justifies murder. I've never understood why this guy is not getting our back in this. The president of the United States, Barack Obama, is who I'm referencing. Why he doesn't have our back in talking about these animals who are killing us. Instead, we're hearing this story that we shouldn't have used our First Amendment, and that's probably hate speech, and we need to arrest people that use hate speech. So here's the chilling effects that Big Brother's 1984 Orwellian nightmare will bring to 2012 America. Just stop talking, or else you too could be arrested, like Brandon Robb or like this idiot who made the video. Just stop talking, and you'll be safe. I don't get where they're coming from, Blake.
No, that's unprecedented as far as I know. It took a completely fictitious story and ran with it so far as to use it to even come after the First Amendment, including in front of the United Nations, to the point where even one of the heads, Ban Ki-moon, even condemned, the First Amendment, and he got up and said, free speech is such a great thing. But in the case of this video, maybe something needs to be done. And, the guy that made the video is a creep, and he deserves public ridicule. But they were going to pin this all on him, probably throw him into a dungeon somewhere. No one was going to miss him anyway. It looked like the perfect crime. But, details are finally coming out that this had nothing to do with that YouTube video.
Well, you're hearing even more difficult to understand and unravel stories now that this may be related to some sort of gun-running scandal where Ambassador Chris Stevens was part of some plan to arm rebels who were Al-Qaeda, getting arms to Syrian rebels through Libya, through Turkey. This story, Blake, I'm telling you, it gets so weird. Every chance you dig into another story, you say, there's no way that could also be true. And in the absence of genuine leadership, we're out here guessing. We're out here chasing our tails and chasing shadows, trying to get to the bottom of this. Was this... apparently there was a meeting that this Ambassador Stevens had that day with one of the leaders of this group, this Al-Qaeda group on the other side, as part of an arms deal. Think Fast and Furious. Mix in a few other countries, shake it up a lot, mix God and Jihad in there somewhere, and that's kind of what you're looking at. It's a repeat of the Fast and Furious debacle with Eric Holder and Barack Obama over in Libya, Syria, and Turkey. And I'm kind of getting tired of all this Team America World Police stuff. I just don't see this ending well, Blake.
No, what they're doing, I mean, they're arming like radical groups over there, and to basically do the dirty work for them, and it's gotten out of control. I don't know if they even know if they have a complete control over what's going on and all the different groups, and it's really this is blowback, and something major happened. They didn't want the public to find out, especially this close to the election. And I don't know how this is going to play out. I don't. Like you're saying, it was like a kind of a watershed moment, or the dam's about to break. We could see something, major. Yeah, the next Watergate, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't see a way. I don't see a way that the liberal media can circle their horses, circle their wagons, and protect Barack Obama. How many days left? 12 days, 13 days, something like that. 11 days.
Well, it could be a little longer with this supposed hurricane delaying.
Yeah. So how about some martial law, and how about a bank holiday, and how about seizing the government or a contingency plan due to national emergency? What about that, Blake? What about that? Do you think we're going to have a legitimate election?
I don't know. I mean, there's so many things coming out with, voting fraud. There's something going on with, even saw some sort of a Ben Swann video. I know we're both big fans of Ben Swann, talking about the voting machines, and the voting machine company, I believe, was giving money to Mitt Romney's campaign, and they run the machines in Ohio, probably the most critical state of all as far as the election's going. There's just so many things from so many different angles. There's talk about riots if Obama loses. You kind of get the...
Now, why is that only if Obama loses and not if Romney loses? Why would there only be riots on one side?
Because we'll say the poorer people that are more likely to support Obama feel like they're threatened if Obama loses, that maybe the checks stop coming in or something. There seems to be some misinformation, but a lot of people are really, I don't even know how to say this, but some of that kind of dependent class. I think they just think that Mitt Romney's going to take away their benefits or something to that nature. But there seems to be a lot of misinformation, and that could be very dangerous.
Well, we're here on the 26th. We're two games into the World Series. The Giants are up 2-0. By the time people find this, who knows what the World Series will hold? I know the Indians will not win this year. I'll keep holding my breath on that one. But people talk about this October surprise, and people reference that movie with Dustin Hoffman, and it's a great movie. Robert De Niro, Wag the Dog, Woody Harrelson, and it's an amazing movie about a president and about how a war is fabricated around election time to distract, and then how the other candidate officially ends the fake war. And then the other guy has to find a brave serviceman trapped behind enemy lines, good old Shoe, to find a hero so that he could rescue the hero. And some people say that about Benghazi, that this was supposed to be a rescue mission, that someone was supposed to be kidnapped, and he was going to be the hero that rescued someone that had been kidnapped, and it all went wrong. I have no idea. In the absence of leadership, we still don't know the true story of Benghazi, and it's really frustrating. But people talk about Wag the Dog or October Surprise. How much of what we see between now... Let me phrase it that way, Blake. How much of what we see between now and the election do you think is going to be real versus completely fabricated on an enormous level?
Anything goes. I mean, this could be a very, you're talking about a very desperate administration right now, trying to keep this under wraps and trying to keep the people in the dark. And the media that those people kind of look at, it's not reporting on that, so they're not even being informed of that. That's another scary thing. It's very irresponsible. I don't know. All bets are off. I mean, this is going to be a very exciting couple of weeks leading up to the election, that's for sure. Between, the Benghazi thing, the way the liberal media is acting right now, with this hurricane, the election coming up, really interesting news cycle we're going to see in these next couple of weeks.
Well, you gave me a great segue there to kind of shift gears and move on to those other two subjects, because we do want to talk about the media response, or the day the liberal media died, as you phrased it, set to Don McLean's American Pie, as I keep singing it. And we can talk about Hurricane Sandy, HARP, and prepping. But before we do, I got so frustrated reading this story, I kind of cut it 2 paragraphs short. So I just want to wrap up the latest in the ever-evolving story with Benghazi and Libya and the failures in the Obama administration. Woods and at least 2 of the others, once again, back to the story, this is former Navy SEAL Tyrone Woods, part of a small team at the CIA annex about a mile from the U.S. consulate where Ambassador Chris Stevens and his team came under attack. To update this and refresh it here, it said when they heard the shots fired, they informed their higher-ups at the annex to tell them what they were hearing and requested permission to go to the consulate and help out. They were told to stand down, according to sources familiar with the exchange. Soon after, they were again told to stand down. Woods and at least 2 others ignored those orders and made their way to the consulate, which at that point was on fire. Shots were exchanged. The rescue team from the CIA annex evacuated those who remained at the consulate and Sean Smith, who had been killed in the initial attack. They could not find the ambassador and returned to the CIA annex about midnight. At that point, they called again for military support and help because they were taking fire at the CIA safe house or annex. The request was denied. Now this is, Blake, this is the part that really has me just, why are they denying assistance? Do they need all these people to die? Is this part of some sort of plan? I mean, how are you this? It seems so irresponsible. It seems criminally negligent. It seems treasonous, treacherous to aid and abet your enemy this way so as to leave your own forces hung out to dry and no support. They're clearly surrounded. They're clearly in over their heads. Why in the world, Blake, aren't they requesting assistance? Why are they declining the request for assistance?
I'm uncomfortable with the answer, but it looks from what I can tell that they wanted this to happen, that there was a deliberate stand down on purpose. They had every resource available. They had every reason to, they were following this supposedly in real time, and they could have done something about it, and all the evidence is showing that they could have done something about it. So why didn't they? I don't know. Then I can when we're talking about standing down, one of the things that I thought of initially was 9/11 in the basement of the Pentagon or wherever. They were talking about Norman Mineta was confirming that Dick Cheney ordered to stand down on 9/11 when they had a chance to intercept the plane by the Pentagon, and they chose not to. And the whatever object, whether it was a plane or a missile or whatever, hit the Pentagon. Of course, they never released any of the video footage for it, so we're not really sure what happened there. But that seemed to have its own pretext to get into a war with Afghanistan. I don't want to get into a totally different 9/11 subject, but...
Well, look, when you go down the rabbit hole and you get an official reaction, okay, Kennedy was killed by one crazy lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay, he shot all of those shots, and he's that good of an aim, and fine. We're supposed to believe that story. Or, after watching a decade of X-Files, Doctor Who, and Ancient Aliens here, right, nothing happened at Roswell. Nothing was taken over to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And just like, hey, you know what? What was going on in Libya, Benghazi? It was because of a YouTube video, guys. Come on, guys. Nothing to see here. Just go back to sleep. Don't think about the fact that it was on 9/11. No, you're silly to suggest that this is part of an ongoing war. No, we have an official story. See, look, you're crazy if you don't believe our official story. But I think so many people are just awakened to the BS of all of this across the board that we're considering things now that I don't think we used to consider. I mean, to imagine that the CIA or different interest groups could have something to do with President Kennedy's death. Huh. Well, that's a pretty out there theory. Also, that aliens crash landed in Roswell, or that you don't trust that a YouTube video sparked these murders. I don't know. Who's the crazy one? The one that believes those stories or the one that questions them a little deeper, Blake?
No, I hear you, and this one is this latest story is full of holes, and yes, there's the new story today. At first, this is even a new part of the story. I didn't even know that there was a little, what do they call that? A CIA annex that was there.
Safe house or annex,
time.
1 mile away.
They were talking about, for a while there. It looked like they're behind enemy lines. You got these 4 people. You got an ambassador, 2 Navy SEALs, and another guy who's, I think he's a communications guy or whatever, another important bureaucratic type that was there. And they've been calling for security for months. They're kind of out on this island. They're not in an embassy. They're at a consulate or whatever. They're in hostile territory. They had just overthrown, the dictator, handed it over to like radical, rebels and such. So it was a tense situation, and they were calling for security. It was repeatedly denied. You had the September 11th anniversary coming up, and then all of a sudden there is an attack. And they never mentioned, of course, the CIA annex, and it's amazing now that these details are coming out that these guys disobeyed their orders when they knew what was going on and went over to try to help these people. I mean, the bravery is amazing. The more I hear about these Navy SEALs,
right.
You had 2 Navy SEALs with the original group that were in the 7-hour firefight, wounded. Are you talking about just the absolute, this badass, heroism, and they just left them. They didn't try to, get an evacuate them. They didn't try to rescue them. I don't know what was going on. They were obviously in communications with these guys. It's a huge. To me, it's not a blunder. This was allowed to happen. I just try to figure out why, or what are they trying to hide from?
Blake, their best case scenario is that this was a blunder. Their worst case scenario, their middle case scenario is it was a blunder that they engaged in a month and a half long cover up because it was embarrassing and they didn't want to lose a re-election. And at the very worst, this was part of a plan, and all of these requests were denied because they needed it to play out this badly. For what? Could this be a false flag for something, an October surprise, a wag the dog moment? And are the Republicans like Sean Hannity only really hitting this hard because it could damage Obama? Or are people finally waking up to the fact that Republicans and Democrats are both not to be trusted in this country? That they're both the ones perpetrating all of these crazy... I don't even know how to finish that thought. Under the leadership of Republicans and Democrats exclusively for the past 100 years, we've sure gotten entangled in 2 world wars and seen the devaluation of the dollar by 97%. It sure seems like the Republicans and Democrats need to be put out to pasture, if I'm reading history correctly.
No, you're absolutely right. And we looked at that third debate that was supposed to be on foreign policy, and what did we see? Pretty much, the same thing. They're very much on the same page with the foreign policy, which has been atrocious for a long time. And Mitt Romney's got 17 of his 24 defense advisors or national security advisors are from Bush Cheney. So, I mean, there really isn't much of a difference.
I thought you were going to say 17.
You don't allow a third party in there to challenge the foreign policy, so nobody sees, a different point of view on it.
I thought you were going to say 17 out of the 24 children. Or something like that. I was picturing this huge Mormon family. You ever see that picture where it's Romney and like the grandkids or the kids are lined up in order, and it's supposed to say Romney on their T-shirts, but it says "Our Money"? Did you ever see that one?
No, I want to see that. That's awesome, though.
We've posted it on our YouTube and on our Twitter. It's definitely if you scroll through our Facebook, it's down there. Go back a few months. We post it every now and then when we want to laugh. It says "Our Money." But, no, I mean, this whole thing is a giant mess. To wrap up this story here, because I definitely want to bounce over to talk about the media response, because this is something that's near and dear to your heart, Blake, talking about the day the liberal media died. So here's wrapping up the latest on Benghazi. At that point, they called again for military support and help because they were taking fire at the CIA safe house, or annex. Their request was denied. There were no communications problems at the annex, according to those present at the compound. The team was in constant radio contact with their headquarters. In fact, at least one member of the team was on the roof of the annex manning a heavy machine gun when mortars were fired at the CIA compound. The security officer had a laser on the target that was firing and repeatedly requested backup support from a Spectre gunship, which is commonly used by U.S. Special Operations Forces to provide support to special operations teams on the ground involved in intense firefights. The fighting at the CIA annex went on for more than 4 hours, Blake, enough time for any planes based in the Sigonella Air Base just 480 miles away to arrive. So basically, they had targeted with lasers the GPS coordinates of what they needed their drone or their military. I don't know what.
Whatever the plane is to get the coordinates. It's a little more sophisticated, modern day. But you're in a little building, and you've got a mortar team, how many miles away or whatever, launching mortars at you. And the guy's got the coordinates of where the mortars are coming from. He's calling in air support to basically, stop this attack. And no assistance was given.
Yeah.
Shameful.
Yeah, Fox News also learned that there were 2 separate Tier 1 Special Operations Forces that were told to wait, among them Delta Force operators. A Special Operations Team, or CIF, which stands for Commanders in Extremis Force, operating in Central Europe, had been moved to Sigonella, Italy, but they were never told to deploy. In fact, a Pentagon official says there were never any requests to deploy assets from outside the country. A second force that specializes in counterterrorism rescues was on hand at Sigonella, according to senior military and intelligence sources. According to these sources, they could have flown to Benghazi in less than 2 hours. I think this was a 9-hour firefight, a 7-hour, at least a 4. They were the same distance to Benghazi as those that were sent from Tripoli. Spectre gunships are commonly used by the special operations community to provide close air support. According to sources on the ground, during the attack, the special operator on the roof of the CIA annex had visual contact and a laser pointing at the Libyan mortar team that was targeting the CIA annex. The operators were calling in the coordinates of where the Libyan forces were firing from, saying, "Hey, can you go kill these guys? They're about to kill us." So
words don't express. So there's actually now it goes from this one consulate, 4 guys, to there's another rescue team a little bit away. Not a rescue team, but a CIA annex. There's some other people there, some other kind of safe house. They disobey orders, leave, go to the consulate, rescue the people that they could, come back, and then that building, their little CIA annex safe house, that comes under fire by a mortar team who are just closing in. I think they fired, 4 shots, and 3 of them hit the building, and that ended up killing that last guy you were talking about.
Yeah, I watched an interview with Megyn Kelly talking with the father of. Oh yeah. I believe it was Tyrone Woods.
I've got that article too.
That's hard, man. I watched that interview, and this is obviously lies upon lies. And finding out that your son was calling for help and was the hero that ran in, disobeying the orders to let these guys get killed. Just trying to put myself in this mind. So here's what Defense Secretary Leon Panetta does. He tries to go inside the minds of the fathers or the American citizens feeling betrayed by their country at this point. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta told reporters at the Pentagon on Thursday that there was not a clear enough picture of what was occurring on the ground in Benghazi to send help. Quote, "There's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking going on here," Panetta said Thursday, "but the basic principle here is that you don't deploy forces into harm's way without knowing what's going on." Well, Mr. Panetta, I think we know what was going on. It was called in 3 times, and it's called they're getting their asses kicked, and they're going to die if you don't help them. I think we do know what's going on. Isn't that what our special forces are there for, to go help each other out and not leave our brave military members to get picked off, former SEALs?
Yeah, that's exactly what should be, but there's something more to the story that we're not being told, and I guess the two theories that I know of, and one you didn't, or actually you mentioned them both. One, is there a gun-running cover-up with everything going on in the Middle East and maybe arming the rebels against Syria or what?
Libya,
arming
I believe it's
groups.
Libya through Turkey back to Syria, and now Russia's calling on the U.S. and this is where you have that moment, that Pearl Harbor moment that sucks us into World War II. Here's where you have that moment, the Archduke Ferdinand that gets us sucked into World War I. Now here's Russia exposing that the U.S. is gun running to operations in Syria against the Russian Syrian assets, and our own president's on camera talking to the Russian leader saying, "I'll have more flexibility after my last election." Really? And we're going to trust this guy as commander-in-chief? I'm instantly calling for his resignation. I can't sit on the sidelines on this, Blake. It seems obvious to me that it's either completely incompetent, please step aside to give this job to someone that can do the job, or when you're making concessions to the Russians as the Russians are ready to declare war on us over what we're funding, getting resources into the hands of the Syrian rebels through Turkey and Libya, and that this Chris Stevens might be involved, it's all about to hit the fan, and it sure as hell doesn't seem like this commander-in-chief is representing the interests of the United States people. I am confused, Blake. Where am I off base on this?
Well, okay, yeah, there's another reason of this cover-up, of course, is if they wanted to leave them out on an island as a potential hostage situation, that kind of an October surprise, and then they can later go in and save Christopher Stevens. So, like, you know, maybe that the whole attack was allowed to happen, and it went wrong, and Stevens ended up dying instead, so they couldn't grab him as hostage and then come rescue him right in time for the election. That's another theory. And the other thing is just to kind of talk about that, the media has gotten completely corrupt because Obama shouldn't even be there. Like you're saying, calling in for his resignation, he should have been out of there a long time ago, but the media has been completely corrupted with the parties. Between Fast and Furious or NDAA, and what else? I think there's another one that escapes me that I've forgotten too. All right, just basically the whole identity thing that's he has an issue with, but the media is not doing anything or going after him because he's in their party. So that's where we stand today.
To wrap this up as best I can, U.S. officials argued that there was a period of several hours when the fighting stopped before the mortars were fired at the annex, leading officials to believe that the attack was over. Fox News has learned that there were 2 military surveillance drones redirected to Benghazi shortly after the attack on the consulate began. They were already in the vicinity. The second surveillance craft was sent to relieve the first drone, perhaps due to fuel issues. Both were capable of sending real-time visuals back to U.S. officials in Washington, D.C. Any U.S. official or agency with the proper clearance, including the White House Situation Room, State Department, CIA, Pentagon, and others, could call up that video in real time on their computers. This is, by the way, when they're saying that the president went to sleep. While all of this was going on, he went to sleep because he had a big day flying out to Las Vegas, your backyard, to party with Jay-Z and Beyonce for a fundraiser. That's another side issue. Tyrone Woods was later joined at the scene by fellow former Navy SEAL Glenn Doherty, who was sent in from Tripoli as part of a global response staff, or GRS, that provides security to CIA case officers and provides counter-surveillance and surveillance protection. They were killed by a mortar shell at 4 a.m. Libyan time, nearly 7 hours after the attack on the consulate began, a window that represented more than enough time for the U.S. military to send backup from the nearby bases in Europe, according to sources familiar with special operations. 4 mortars were fired at the annex. The first one struck outside. 3 more hit the annex. A motorcade of dozens of Libyan vehicles, some mounted with 50 caliber machine guns belonging to the February 17th Brigades, a Libyan militia which is friendly to the U.S., finally showed up at the CIA annex at approximately 3 a.m. An American Quick Reaction Force sent from Tripoli had arrived in Benghazi airport at 2 a.m., 4 hours after the initial attack on the consulate. And it was delayed 45 minutes at the airport because they could not at first get transportation, allegedly due to confusion among Libyan militias who were supposed to escort them to the annex, according to Benghazi sources. The American special operators, Woods, Doherty, and at least 2 others, were part of the Global Response Staff, a CIA element based at the CIA annex, and were protecting CIA operators. Wait a minute, didn't I mention the CIA with President John F. Kennedy and the whole Lee Harvey Oswald thing, and then how the Russians may have been behind? Wait, history doesn't repeat itself. Silly me, I'm a conspiracy theory. Anyway, they're protecting CIA operators on part of a mission to track and repurchase arms in Benghazi. This is beautiful, Blake. This is Fast and Furious Middle Eastern style. Let me just reset this again. The American Special Operators, Woods, Doherty, and at least 2 others, were part of the Global Response Staff, which is a CIA element based at the CIA Annex, and were protecting CIA operators who were part of a mission to track and repurchase arms in Benghazi that had proliferated in the wake of Muammar Gaddafi's fall. Oh, yeah, like we didn't participate in that and do that on our own to take him out and then get the arms to these people. Part of their mission was to find the more than 20,000 missing man-pads or shoulder-held missiles capable of bringing down a commercial aircraft. According to a source on the ground at the time of the attack, the team inside the CIA annex had captured 3 Libyan attackers and was forced to hand them over to the Libyans. U.S. officials don't know what happened to those 3 attackers and whether they were released by the Libyan forces. As if this was all an attack to free these 3 people that were brought in because they're our friends, but they're not our friends, but we gave weapons to our enemies who later killed us, just like in Fast and Furious. Fox News.
Just like any other things, Iraq or anything. We have a history of foreign policy of arming enemies or arming, and what's going on right now is just arming these like radical Islamist groups and to do dirty work for us. And you get blowback when you start doing stuff like that. So this is really getting out of control. I don't know if they have control. That's what worries me the most.
I think you might be onto something there. Final paragraph. Fox News also learned that Stevens was in Benghazi that day to be present at the opening of an English-language school being started by the Libyan farmer who helped save an American pilot who had been shot down by pro-Gaddafi forces during the initial war to overthrow the regime. That farmer saved the life of the American pilot, and the ambassador wanted to be present to launch the Libyan rescuers' new school. I also heard a story saying that they were meeting with some of those, let's just call them gang leaders. And the meeting went out of control, and the rival gang leader killed the guy that set up this meeting because of guns running to other gang members. I'm trying to distill this for something that people in Chicago can understand. People in D.C. or people in L.A. Think gangs, all right? We're talking Libya, people we don't know or understand. Just think gangs. And I'm telling you, Blake, this latest in this story is just going to keep churning. This is nowhere near the end of this story. But the fact that they were denied 3 times for assistance during a 7-hour firefight, if that were my cousin, if that were my, wife or husband or son or daughter that went through that, can you imagine how you would feel knowing that you've just been getting your ass kicked and you're begging for assistance, and they could have easily sent in crew to help them, and they kept at least three times said no.
Yeah, that's good that Charles Woods, the father of one of those fallen Navy SEALs, a hero, by the way, and he said he met Obama. Obama gave him a feeble apology. He said, shaking his hand was like shaking a hand with a dead fish. He didn't look him in the eye. That's a big deal right there. So yes, there is an angry father right now confronting Obama on it.
And so they're saying that when he shook the president's hand, the president did not look this father in the eye, and the handshake was a cold, wet fish handshake from the president.
Yeah, pretty much. And it was a feeble apology. Jeez. And, he's got a lot of explaining to do, Mr. Obama.
Well, let's explain this. Let's bounce over to if they're not going to explain it, we have this wing of our government, of our constitutionally protected republic, our democracy, as it were, the constitutional republic that we have, where the media, if we're not getting the answers, they keep asking and they get the answers. So let's do this. Let's transition over here real quick, because I want to talk with you a little bit about the media response, or how the day the liberal media died, set to the tune of Don McLean's American Pie.
Yep.
And then we'll briefly touch on Hurricane Sandy. HARP, if you don't know what HARP is, it's that some people might be able to control the weather and create these super hurricanes that could disrupt elections and throw a country into martial law, chaos, riots, and whatnot. And we'll talk about prepping on the other side. So I want to take this moment to remind everybody, our guest right now is Blake the Eccentric Wally. You can find him on, eccentricperspective.com, correct? There's no the.
Correct.
Okay,
yeah,
so
no
it's
the.
eccentricperspective.com. He is a radio host on Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays from noon to 1:30 p.m. Pacific on freedomizerradio.com. You click play, you listen live all across the globe. I frequently co-host with Blake on Mondays and then the occasional Wednesday or Thursday over there. And make sure you're following Blake. He is on Twitter at eccentric99. And if you have not subscribed to our YouTube page, please do so, youtube.com/The New American Media. And if you're not following us on Twitter, we're at American_media_. If you're listening in real time, this is going to take just a matter of seconds. And if you're listening off air after the fact on YouTube, thank you. But we're going to switch gears here, and we're going to talk about the liberal media response to this Benghazi story and how telling it is that they're refusing to do their job because they're so in the tank for this candidate. That's why we have to be the new American media, because nobody else is going to do it for us. We'll be right back on the other side. My name is Brian Engelman. You're listening to Agree to Disagree here on the TNAM radio network here at thenewamericanmedia.com.
You are listening to The New American Media.